So, first of all, I wanted to say thanks to the invitation by Tanzim August to host this conversation. The title of the conversation, which is inside of the frame of Happy to Listening, which is the format of Tanzim August, we have titled the conversation The Jaguar Talks, which is a frame that we have been practicing for a while, in which different modes of knowing enter in dialogue without the habitual hierarchies between them. It's a way of rehearsing an ecology of forms of knowing. And the undertitle of the talk is Dance as a Form of Offering, Danza como una forma de ofrenda. So I am co-hosting this talk together with Nicole Heitzinger. Nicole Heitzinger works at the Department of Art History, Musicology, and Dance Studies at the University of Salzburg. She completed a postgraduate course at the Department of Theater, Film, and Media Studies at the University of Vienna. She's a dramaturg and curator, collaborates on different international projects and theory practice modules, gives guest lectures, and teaches internationally in Moscow, Nice, Shanghai, Beijing, London, Belgrade, Mexico City. She is researching lately on exotic dance at the beginning of the 20th century, and she's very interested in questions of decoloniality in art, in dance, but also beyond it. So I'm going to give the word to Nicole.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. I'm very honored to be here. We are an ensemble. We are a group of people who work together since quite a few years in different constellations. And this is what Amanda mentioned in the beginning. It is called Endangered Human Movement. In a bit, Amanda is going to explain this concept. But first, I want to introduce two very important persons, artists, choreographers, shamans, the Maracame, Juan José Luis Catira Ramirez, here with us, and his wife,
Tulama Ramirez, Maria Teresa.
And it's a great honor for us to have you here. The Maracame is Maracame of the community of a community in Mexico, and he is a governor of his community. He has different offices, and he works there and also in ceremonial centers. And he is an active leader figure and defender of the ancestral sacred territory of his community, Virikuta community. And we can say he is an ambassador of his culture and of ancestral and contemporary knowledge. There is a documentary film done also about his work and his community, and it is called The Last Peyote Guardians. And the Maracame understands his works as a form of activism, as a healing, as a somatic activism, and in Mexico.
And Tulama Ramirez is Maria Teresa Ramirez, Tulama Ramirez Muñoz. She learned from her parents the healing tradition of medicine woman. Through the work with her partner Maracame Catira, she develops this knowledge and beyond her community. As an artist, she has the knowledge of textile embroidery, and Nyerika ritual objects. She carries the responsibility towards her community as a follower and keeper of the tradition for younger generations. She's a mother of 9 children. She is also a Maracame singer and shaman, a title that is only acquired after pilgrimage and sacrifice to the 5 directions, and she offers in the ritual and ceremonies of her community in the process of communication with the ancestral deities.
Yes, and then we have here also present from Mexico, Rodrigo de la Torre. And Rodrigo, or Rigo, is his nickname, is a dancer, choreographer, and a worker. And he's born in the city of Matamoros. And he started a dance in the dance of matlachinas at the age of 15, so very young, inside a more or less folkloric dance context. But very soon he decided he wanted to transform, to transgress this structure of the dance with his comrades to a new form of dance, leaving behind traditional implication. And he really created a new dance style that is expanded in the region. And he has been invited to different festivals and dance schools, and he teaches his new dance style in various contexts. And both of the presented, or the three of them, are experts. They bring in different knowledges, as we all do. And this is very important because Amanda is going to explain a little bit more about the endangered human movements projects. But maybe as a preamble, we can say this concept is not about production after production after production, but it's a durational art space research.
Thank you, Nicole. And yes, I will explain a bit the project. So Endangered Human Movements is the title of a long-term research, started in 2014, more or less, maybe started before, but I didn't know, and I haven't formulated yet at that time. And it focused on human movement practices which have been cultivated for centuries or thousands of years all over the world. But within this frame, a series of performances, workshops, films, installations, talks, publications, and an online archive are developed in which ancestral embodied practices, movement, dances, and forms of world making reappear in the context of the theater, the museum, and beyond. This reappearance of ancestral forms of movement entails a movement towards decolonizing contemporary arts and culture by introducing critical perspectives from the field of anthropology, sociology, history, dance history, philosophy, visual arts, dance, choreography, and contemporary traditional indigenous Amerindian knowledge, the latter encompassing not only contemporary shamanism, but also orally transmitted knowledge, social knowledge about the body, about movement and touch, about healing, about plants, about perception, about the interconnectedness of life forms, and about ritual diplomatic knowledge applied to the relationship with other beings. So in the frame of that research, I have had the pleasure and the privilege to work with Maracame Ramirez and Tulama, and also with Rigo, with Maracame Ramirez as the expert of volume 3, the School of the Jaguar, which deals with forms of relation between animals, humans, and plants in Amerindian culture, specifically in Wirrárica culture, but also about forms of iconography from the whole Americas, like Amerindian iconography. And with Rodrigo de la Torre, we have had the pleasure to work together in the volume 4 of the research, Danza y Frontera, in the frame of which we have created already different contexts and exhibition, 2 pieces for theater and for the museum, and also a piece for site-specific context, Frontera Border, a living monument, which we are bringing this year to Tans in August. So more or less, that's the frame of the research.
Yes, and we decided to give this talk a title, and we called it Dance as a Form of Offering. And this would be my first question to the Maracame. Amanda, maybe you can just translate, and we start with a simple but at the same time very complex question about dance as a form of offering in his context, in his community.
Entonces, maestro, la primera pregunta para usted y para Tulama es: ¿cómo es la danza una forma de ofrenda en su contexto comunitario, en el contexto de Wirrárica y en su experiencia personal?
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Hablando por parte de la cultura, patrimonio cultural, pues eso representa a la comunidad wixárika Tatequí y San Andrés Coamiata, municipio de Mezquitil, de estado de Jalisco, que es pueblo de wixárika. Tatequí quiere decir casa nuestra madre. Y eso, la idea es para hacer recordatorio de los antiguos, de las edades, se danza esa espiral, como va, camino de reloj, y luego al contrario, esa danza espiral para despertar a la tierra madre universal.
So I think I have to translate to you. So in the context of the wixárika tradition of Tatequí, this is in Jalisco, the community dances in the form of a spiral, and it dances towards time and space in order to sort of encounter ancestral time and remember the ancestral deities. So dance as a form of offering has to do with remembering, recalling, or reawakening the presence of the ancestral deities.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo.
Muchas gracias, Matt.
Muchas gracias. Rodrigo, for you in the Matamoros context and with your company and your dancers there, how do you understand dance as a form of offering? Is it for you an offering, or which function has your dance for the community?
Well, yes, it is a dance of offering, because every time we do it as a Catholic, we do it thinking about our problems and on so many things that we want to get better in our lives. So we dance thinking in the Virgin to help us. That's the like a big offering for us doing this, and doing some time like penitence is when you suffer doing not a dance but going in your knees or with your back. So you're offering your pain, your blood, you are suffering, so you can get like help from them.
But Rigo, question, is your context really Catholic, or is it more about, ¿es tu contexto realmente católico o es una penitencia o una ofrenda más personal?
Esa es la ofrenda personales de nuestras creencias, donde nos ha dejado nuestro ancestro, nuestro abuelo. Entonces, nosotros como asistente, pues lo hacemos, lo vivimos, práctica y conservamos, lo vivimos y pues preservar para que no se pierda el día de mañana para nuestro hijo, nuestro nieto, y para que ellos sean el día de mañana, ellos sean seguidores sobre todo de la cultura principal.
So Maestro already explained that the form of offering in his case has to do with remembering or bringing again into the context of today the presence of the deities through dance. So that is dance as a form of offering. It's an offering to the ancestral deities to allow their appearance. And in the case of Rigo, we were discussing if it's really Catholic or not, and I wanted to know, for you, Rigo, how do you really see it? Is it Catholic? Is it not Catholic? How is it for you personally? Because I know the context is Catholic, which is also creolized, no, between Virgen de Guadalupe, which has been before, and the Catholic imposition. So if you want to speak English or Spanish,
well, I'm gonna say in Spanish so I can explain better. Okay. el contexto, lo que es acá en la frontera, con este tipo de danza como la mía, que es 100% jóvenes, muchachos, de esos que andan con sus vidas tal vez, la mayoría mal.
Okay, the context of the dance here in the border, it's particularly about young men who are dancing and who have like difficulties in their life because of the context of the border, which is extremely violent and difficult for the male youth. Entonces,
bueno, y a lo que me comentas, que si es una danza de ofrecer, a lo que te dije que era sobre muchos la ofrecen como para obtener de lo que es la Virgen o así, mejoras en sus vidas que en realidad no están bien. Pero
so it's a dance offering in the sense that they offer the dance in order to receive gifts or bettering in their lives, which sometimes are really out of order or they are not so good, from the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is this Creole figure, right? Which is Christian, but not only, which has been there before.
Bueno, pero no todos tienen la mentalidad católica aferrada sobre bailar para obtener mejoras en su vida. Muchos también es como ofrecimiento, porque cuando danzas, que ofreces tu cansancio, tu sudor, tu sangre en las rodillas, todo eso, muchas veces, como en lo particular, yo lo hago para que la danza me dé esa tranquilidad de sacar todas las cosas malas de mi mente, todos los problemas.
So, but not everybody of the dancers of Matamoros offer the dance to the deity. In my personal case, I offer the dance, the sweat, the exhaustion, the blood, sometimes in my knees because of some moments of the dance, towards the possibility of allowing myself to be like sort of cleansed from all the preoccupations, all the worries, so to allow to enter in another state through the dance. So I offer the dance to that.
And this seems to be a similarity between the three of you, not only the offering, but also first the appearance of the deities or a spiritual instance, and also this very physical, somatic aspect in the offerings. So it's not only transcendental, but the physical.
Le voy a traducir al maestro. Dice que en nuestras formas de entender la danza, de los cuatro, hay algo similar, que es que pensamos en la danza como una ofrenda a las deidades, o como para que reaparezcan las deidades, pero también como algo muy físico que genera una especie de limpieza de los pensamientos, de las cosas negativas.
Exactamente. Es ese ejercicio el que se ha venido manejando, podemos llamarlo, esos medicinales que te puede curar, te puede sanar, porque es muy antigua, sagrada. Por eso no hay que dejarlo a un lado. Como todo, sabemos que todos los deportistas hacen y mete su fuerza, pues hace que para bueno su salud, para que todo saque, ¿no? Entonces viene siendo la misma, entonces son pues esa terapéutica es muy buena para sanar todo el cuerpo.
Perfecto, lo voy a traducir. Su maestro Katira says that ancestrally dance has been also a form of healing without disease, like a healing that it is to allow the body to continue be healthy, to continue be like sort of in a good state, like almost therapeutic, like in the sense of every person who works with the body also sort of needs to warm up, needs to create certain context in which the knowledge of the body can emerge, and it can be for the benefit of his body and soul, something like that. So And in the sense, in a sense, like dance as a form of offering is not only, as you say, an offering towards the deities, but also it's an offering towards the really like immanent existence of the body, ¿no? La danza como forma de ofrenda no es solamente para las deidades, sino que a la vez es para la existencia encarnada y corporal de nosotros. Maybe I have a question for Maestro Katira, right? Which is, Maestro, you told me, I say it first in English and then se lo traduzco, ¿ya? Maestro, you told me that in order to learn to be a person of knowledge, a healer and an artist, one must have commitments and promises. How does that work? Maestro, usted me dijo que para ser una persona de conocimiento y para ser un sanador o un marácame, uno tiene que tener compromisos y promesas. ¿Cómo funciona eso? ¿Nos podría explicar un poco? Y dejarme que traduzca.
Pues bueno, cuestión de aprendizaje para hombre de conocimientos, alguno viene ya heredado a través de su padre, a través de su madre. Por ejemplo, la maestra Tula pues ya viene heredado con su papá, con su abuela y con su mamá. Maracame también es su mamá.
Okay.
Algunos.
Some people already have from their family. So, for example, in the case of Tulama, she inherited this ability to be a person of knowledge, to be a Maracame, because her mother was already a Maracame, and she got it from her lineage, from her mother line. ¿Sí, maestro?
Sí, y otro, y el quien quiera, pues también, y no iniciado, y pues también puede tomar compromiso y cumplir la promesa. Ahí poco a poco ahí va entrando, ¿no? Entonces hay otra oportunidad de que puede haber, aunque no está heredado con padre, con la familia.
So when you didn't inherit this knowledge and this position, you can develop it through making commitments and promises. Pero ¿cómo, maestro? ¿Cómo se hacen esas promesas y compromisos? ¿Son a las deidades
pues
también?
Pues igual manera como si usted que de veras valora a lo que tú quieras, como lo hacemos, toda la danza o lugares sagrados, visitar, eso también uno ya va recibiendo la energía importante, más profundo, más serio. Entonces eso es lo que va empezando hacia camino de sabiduría.
So this is beautiful. The commitment happens through the dancing. So if you commit to make a dance, and that you fulfill that commitment, that promise, and you reproduce the dance, or you go in pilgrimage to the sacred places, like what Rigo does when he goes pilgrimage with the dancers towards El Chorrito, towards the Virgin of Guadalupe, through that sort of path of commitment and fulfilling that commitment through dance and offering, you can also enter a path of becoming a person of knowledge, becoming a healer, a Maracame, or somebody who has a deeper knowledge about body healing and dance. Buenísimo. Ahí hay mucha conexión, Rigo.
Mm. And to
Cuéntanos tú también, ¿no, Rigo? Because you said, Rigo, and I will quote you, you said sometimes in the dance, when I go in the pilgrimage, in the offering, I dance so much and so long that my body is so exhausted that it cannot anymore. My body doesn't want to dance. My legs don't want to move, but my heart wants to dance. So my legs, even if they cannot, they can. How is this experience of going beyond exhaustion in your dance?
Pues no, me imagino que yo es algo como sobrenatural esas cosas que no entiendes, no te caben por la mente, cómo puede pasar. Que cuando ya no puedes hacer algo que es lo que quieres estar haciendo, por estar bailando muchísimo tiempo, muchísimas horas, una danza tan fuerte como la de nosotros es una danza súper fuerte, con mucha energía. ¿Quieres traducir o digo?
So for him, he thinks that it is something almost supernatural, because when he is dancing, and especially the dance of Matamoros, which is a dance that is very exhausting, that it really like expends a lot of energy. Sí, llegué.
Bueno, y tu cuerpo te lo está pidiendo, te pide dos cosas, que pares y que sigas. Es algo súper rarísimo, como que entras en un trance totalmente, es cuando te olvidas de todo alrededor, te olvidas de todo, tu mente está teniendo una sensación de liberación, te estás liberando y la satisfacción que estás teniendo supera el dolor y el cansancio. Y es cuando el cuerpo sin querer sigue y sigue.
So for him, it's very strange. There are two different tendencies in that moment when you dance so long that you are so exhausted, you almost cannot dance. And what is against the dance, like your body doesn't want to dance. And at the same time, there is this very strong tendency towards continuing dancing. And through that process, there is some kind of alchemy in which your mind sort of liberates from its thoughts or from its content. And in that moment, your body continues dancing. And that is something very, very strange, like a very particular experience of dance.
And I think this is also the Maracame in the workshop. Maybe he can tell us a bit more about the ceremonies and these long durations, and what does it do with the bodies and the community.
Exactly. Maestro, si usted nos podría contar también cómo es para usted, porque Rodrigo está explicando esta sensación de bailar cuando ustedes bailan el mitote. Son muchos días, ¿no? ¿Cuánto tiempo bailan y cómo es la experiencia? ¿Qué es lo que siente el cuerpo? ¿Qué es lo que siente usted? ¿Cómo empieza a pensar cuando baila tanto tiempo?
Pues meter tanto fuerza es al mismo tiempo estar recibiendo la energía, mensajes ancestrales y la energía ancestral. Entonces, la idea es no aparte, no perder el camino, todo tienes y que ser, concentrarse más a menudo y más en serio, entonces ya te va abriendo más camino, ¿no?
Okay.
Pues es como un estudio, como se hace en una carrera, ¿no? Si tú vas nomás una sola día, tercer día ya no llega, pues no quiere estudiar, no, pues es que no está enterado, ¿no? Entonces eso tiene que estar menudamente siempre concentrado y pecado no zafarse.
Okay, a ver si puedo. So Maestro says, when you dance so many days, like in the dance of the mitote, it's very important that you don't give up, because this dance, at the same time that you give a lot of strength and that you lose a lot of strength and energy, it gives you ancestral energy. It brings you to remember and to receive ancestral energy of the dance. So the dance, in that sense, is like a university career. It is like a path of knowledge, which teaches you their way to go without giving up, without letting go, always going a bit farther in the path of the dancing.
And Amanda, now the question to you, because you in the Tanzi im August performance, you have also this danza frontera, this very slow beginning. So do you think, or is it a sort of a reappearance of these ideas of ancestral energies and what Rodrigo says that go beyond physical limits, and the Marakame said now that this, in a condensed form, it reappears.
Well, the slow steps in the piece are the steps of the danza de Matamoros at a very reduced speed. But they are the same steps, and somehow the steps and the slowness of it allows the appearance of certain figures that are somehow not composed by us, but compossessed, like they are emergent, and we are hosting their appearance, right? And there are like 46 figures that appear in the creation of the piece, which somehow follows more indigenous logic of making art than a Western logic, because instead of composing, thinking about time as a line, compossessing or allowing the possession or hosting the appearance of these entities requires much more a mode of listening than a mode of, like deciding, composing, and putting in there like something from intentionality, like from human intentionality. It is another path somehow, and probably it is very a different form of making performance. I think it's kind of very particular, inspired very much from indigenous knowledge. But I think that those slow steps accumulate into the final dance of Rigo, which somehow are sort of condensing the experience, but also hosting other figures that are really not designed, like that they appear in the bodies of the performers in relation to Rigo's dance, in relation to the idea of border, in relation with the work of Gloria Anzaldúa, and all the other figures that we invoke in the dance, like El Mojado, El Conquistador, La Malinche, etc. So something like that, like hosting the appearance of those figures, I think.
So maybe we come back to the heart. So because we talked a lot about this, and Rigo, you said this also, it's very important. Amanda quoted you, the heart
wants to dance.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what it means for you. The heart wants to dance.
And this relation, my mind doesn't want to dance, but my heart wants to dance. How it is important to dance from the heart.
Sí, mira, danzar, y más siento yo este tipo de danza como la mía, me ha dado mucho. La satisfacción que yo siento es hermosa. Es esa sensación que no quiero dejar tener nunca. Siendo así que yo, para poder danzar, he tenido que pasar tantísimos y sigo pasando muchos problemas que no tienen nada que ver con danza.
Okay, so for me, dance, it has given me a lot of satisfaction, and the sensation, the feeling of that satisfaction is something I never want to let go. I always want to reproduce. I always want to dance in order to achieve this satisfaction. But for me, dance has been extremely difficult because of issues that have nothing to do with dance.
Sí, todos los problemas que convergen alrededor de que no me dejan danzar, siempre el corazón es el que me mantiene como atravesando todos esos problemas. Como ahorita que tengo que ir a este festival. ¿Vas a traducir?
Yes, so in all the problems that don't allow me to dance somehow are overcome by the determination of my heart of being able to dance. Like, for example, now that I have to go to Tanzim August in Berlin.
Que como ya tú lo sabes, Amanda, que yo vivo aquí en la frontera, cruzando la frontera. Mi mente y mi preocupación no me dejan dormir por ver cómo es que voy a cruzar la frontera de nuevo. Es una preocupación grandísima, que es como la que me detiene.
Sí, so as you know, Amanda, like I live at the border, and my preoccupation when going to the festival to dance is how I'm gonna come back and cross the border again. And it's a preoccupation that doesn't allow me to sleep, and it's something that it's very real, and it really sort of wants to stop me from engaging in the dance.
Bueno, pero como dice Nicole, el corazón es el que todavía puede con muchísimo más de eso, que es el que quiere que sigas teniendo esa sensación que barre con todos esos problemas.
So the heart, as Nicole says, is the one that continues holding on to the dance because it wants to achieve the sensation which kind of erase all those problems. Y también para usted, maestro, como estamos preguntando ahorita el tema del corazón, de qué forma es importante bailar con corazón y de qué forma es importante el corazón en el arte wixárika. So, maestro, for you, now that we are at the topic of the heart, in which way is important for you to dance with the heart? In which way is the heart important in wixárika art?
Sí, porque en una danza, en un ritual, en ella tú fortaleces y pues hay amor, hay esperanza, más, eso es un empujo más allá, en serio, ¿no? Entonces, eso es algo muy serio de que puede fortalecer más profundo, ¿no?
So in a dance, the heart is strengthened. And that strengthening of the heart, of the commitment, which is also like the commitment to live a path, to go through a path of knowledge, to go through a path of in life, which, you know, is a noble path in a way, that is strengthened by the dance. El camino, ¿no? Está fortalecido, el camino y el corazón están fortalecidos por la danza.
Yes.
Yeah, so the dance is there to strengthen our determination or to produce or allow that strength to strengthen our living, like life as a multidimensional, as all what that can mean, right? Being in the body, being in a place, being in a community. Está muy lindo, maestro. Y Tulama, ¿cómo lo ve? ¿Se quiere lanzar sobre el corazón? ¿Cómo ve, maestro? ¿Sí me va a traducir?
Tina tao mo apa wiya mo mai sale mo me wa ta ka te mo ni ve ka che tra ka wo mo le gu te mo tai ya ta ma ye ta mo na ye ho te ta te ya ri te mo
Yo diría que no cada
te tenemos ni ese mo wi ra ta
no, pues una cosa muy importante, como seguidora a su padre, a su abuela, he aprendido, me ha enseñado a su familia a recorrer todos los lugares sagrados para fortalecer y siempre pensando y al mismo tiempo esa mensaje dejando la ofrenda dirigido a la lluvia, los lugares sagrados y así mismo mandando mensaje y así mismo recibiendo la bendición a nuestro universal de la tierra, dice ella, y que nunca jamás perdería mientras vive ella, dice, para así enseñarlo al futuro, encaminado, dejarlo a la familia, el futuro para que ellos sean seguidores. Dice.
So Tulama says that for her, and because she received this knowledge of offering from her family, which is offering in sacred places that are natural sacred places, like places where water or sources of water, or some offerings are left when they pilgrim through the sacred spaces towards Vidikuta. So they give offerings into sacred spaces like land art for us, but with a sort of spiritual intention, and that strengthens the heart, and that she would never leave that practice, and she wants to leave the practice already on the road for the children and for the family, because she finds very important the way that the relation with the rain, the sources of water, the land as a living body can sort of be a path of knowledge. Gracias, muy hermoso.
Sí, para mí como mujer, pues para mí es muy interesante, pues está enseñando lengua materna a su familia, pues tienen derecho para que vayan aprendiendo lengua materna el día de mañana, porque otra gente ya se han perdido por las civilizaciones, hablan español, hablan otra lengua, ya no quiere hablar en su lengua. Entonces es una carrera que está dando, es para bien al futuro, a su familia.
And for her as a woman, it's very important also to give the mother tongue to the children and to the next generations, so that it's not lost, all this knowledge that is implicit in speaking Virarica and speaking the mother tongue, the tongue of the ancestors. Y tengo una pregunta para Nicole, and I have a question for Nicole also. Because I often think, like, when we work on these transcultural pieces and we create this context, like the School of the Jaguar, like the piece The Jaguar and the Snake, or like Danza Frontera in these multiple versions. So I always have this question. So for example, Nicole, in your research on dancers of color at the beginning of the 20th century, which were classified as exotic dancers, you have learned about, the white gaze, and in which way the white gaze has its limitations, or has had its limitation historically. How could you describe the blind spots of the white gaze when encountering other worlds of sensing, meaning, and perception that are not necessarily under the logic of aesthetics as we understand it in modern colonial Western contexts?
So the first very simple answer would be that this regime of the senses, the hierarchy of the senses in Europe, in the history of early modernity, starting separated the senses. So the gaze, the white gaze, what you say, is a simplification, because it only focuses on the eyes, and all this visuality. But before we spoke about the heart, And I wanted to accentuate that it's very, very important that in a sort of aesthesis, we reconnect the senses and we really perceive with our bodies. And we talked about exhaustion and offerings and continuing, even if it's difficult in very difficult contexts. And I think this is very important for me, also in my positionality, that I really try to work on the decolonization of the senses in projects like this, and really we exchange about the heart, for example. I mean, and trying to search the similarities in our positionalities, and this is very important. And this modern white gaze, and the exotism is a projection, it's a phantasma, because I think in modernity it was felt that there is a lack of something. After you have separated the senses, how are you in the world? You're disconnected somehow. How to reconnect? And then there was this idea that you can, project a sort of melancholy, a sort of desire, a sort of exotism onto other cultures. Mm-hmm. But it does not mean that you connect with these cultures. And for example, today we were in the Musée du Branly in Paris, and it was about an exhibition, really an exhibition of artifacts, in fact, which are totally decontextualized from all over the world. But the blind spot is Europe, because there was not a section Europe. There is Africa, there is Americas, Australia, and so on. So how to also reflect your own socialization, your history, and reconnect it with other forms of knowledge. This is what I try to work on.
So maybe to understand, so maybe the white, the blind spot of the white gaze would be not to be able to see how it is seeing, from where it is watching, in which way it is watching, but to think that what it sees is there as the world, without any question about how one's own view is configured, like by being absent from the picture, right? Something
yes,
like that.
And also reducing the seeing to the eyes and the open eyes.
And the eyes can be used in very different ways, no? But a particular type of focus, because when we dance, for example, in this Rigo and Maracame knows, when we dance, we use the eyes in other forms, right? There is another form of using that. Habla de los espacios de la mirada blanca, y qué es lo que la mirada blanca no ve. Y habla de que la mirada blanca se enfoca en lo visual, en lo que se puede ver como de una forma particular, un uso particular de los ojos, y un entendimiento de lo otro que de alguna forma excluye tu propia posición. Yes. And it's related also maybe with New Age, no? With the question of New Age.
Yes, and this I wanted to ask Amanda, because we are here and we have very different appearances, and somehow there is always a potential danger that the ghost of New Age is hunting us. So, and can you maybe comment this?
Me pregunta sobre el fantasma de lo New Age. So I think the New Age it's also a projection like a projection of a Western ontology into the forms of world making of others, like so that you project this dichotomy between transcendence and immanence, the spirit and the body, which cannot be together in Western thought, you know, but in other contexts they are, like for example in Wixárika context, the spirit and the body are very much together, and they are, you know, and the profane and the sacred are very close, like in the songs of the Maracame. Sometimes some song is really for the deities and some other song is about how you, when you're a child, you pee and you shit on your pants. If nobody comes, you are totally dependent. So for example, so to translate those songs is very difficult in a ceremonial context, because the language already, colonial language, presupposes this dichotomy, right? Things can be or only sacred or only profane or only harmonious or, you know, complex, but they cannot be at the same time. And I think the New Age is a simplification in the same way like the exotic is a simplification. It's a projection of Western ontology, modern colonial Western ontology, form of knowing and understanding the world, into the world making practices of others. It's very, very dangerous because it's a reduction of the diversity of forms of world making in a way. It is somehow a invisible sort of reproduction of the one world of modernity, coloniality.
Yeah, it's an oversimplification, and maybe this is a good moment to ask the Maracame and then also Rigo the question of transformation.
Yeah,
and I quote the Maracame that the deer can transform into a cactus, and the cactus is the book of knowledge, and both the deer and the cactus are transforming into the Maracame, into you. So can you explain us a little bit more this how this works, this transformation, these different states?
Su maestro tiene la pregunta de cómo funciona la transformación, porque ella lo está citando a usted cuando usted escribió en el libro Endangered Human Movements, que usted dijo que el venado se convierte en un cactus y el cactus es al mismo tiempo el venado y el maracame, y hay una transformación entre esas tres figuras, el maracame, el cantador, el venado y el cactus, que es el libro de su conocimiento. ¿Cómo ocurre esa transformación?
Pues mira, todo está, y no nos damos cuenta de una planta que vive en todo nuestra edad. Una piedra, un árbol, un cactus, el medicinal vive en todo, lleno de sabiduría, lleno. Entonces, cuando uno toca, por eso, cuando uno recibe, te da un empujo más allá, a lo más profundo. Es cuando más aprende rápidamente cómo morir, cómo hacer las transformaciones, por dónde ir, por dónde venimos, el alma. Y cuando del morir, la carnación se queda la tierra y se va al cielo, alma, siempre donde venimos. Eso es una cadena, ¿no? Entonces, eso es muy importante, por eso estamos incluidos con el venado en el peyote, o en el fuego, o el maíz, o el cactus, y pues ahí todo, una manera, una sola transformación, ¿sí?
Okay, voy a tratar, I'm going to try. So, in relation to, we don't realize, but plants, a cactus, a deer, a rock, a tree are alive and are contain healing, contain knowledge. So all which is alive contains healing and knowledge. And in relation to the cactus as the book of our knowledge, through the cactus, we can, through ingesting the cactus, we can learn how to die. how to be in the world and how to be in those transformations that are inherent in human life. The transformation of dying, the transformation of, you know, aging, of changing, of actually every stage of living. So in that sense, the transformation is something that is already there and we don't see. So with the relation of with the cactus and the deer, we can sort of learn very fast the ancestral knowledge that is already present in our bodies in relation to the main and very important transformation, which is death, and the transcendence of the death and the decaying of our body, and what happens with our spirit or soul. Está difícil, maestro.
Aquí tenemos el venado. Esta es una familia. Aquí la máscara de venado y aquí está el cacto arriba. Ese se convierte. Yo me la recibo, me la como. El rato también yo soy venado. Wow, ¿no? Estoy viendo venado hacia allá. Cuando me veo, yo también soy venado, ¿no? Una transformación. Sí,
so here's the deer, and here is the cactus, and when I receive it, I transform myself in the cactus. When I look and in the deer, when I look, I see as a deer, and when I look at myself, I am also a deer.
Qué bendición.
What a blessing.
Que nos curen todo, que seamos curados. Gracias por este Zoom. Pues no me resta que decir, pues yo le mando muchas bendiciones, que todo nuestro trabajo fluye, que todo se aleja y el negativo vuelva, esta luz, paz, amor, siempre tengamos, que cada cultura viva a todo el país, la planeta Tierra.
Muchas gracias, maestro. So at this very point, I don't have any more to say than blessings for you, and thanks for this Zoom, and also that the blessings and healing might find us wherever we are in this planet Earth. Gracias, maestro. Y tenemos más preguntas para Rigo.
Ok. Adelante.
Oh,
ya. Tenemos we have a last question for Rigo.
Yes, Rigo, you mentioned before, this is the last question, the transformation and also the violence in your context. So this is another, I think, perspective on transformation in your choreography, in your working context. Maybe how do you perceive it at the moment? What is the potential of a transformation, or do you feel that things are transforming with your community, within your community, with the choreography you do, with the male dancers you work with? Is there, you see transformations, or is it not a relevant aspect for you?
Pues la transformación que se mira y que se siente es solamente mental, porque los muchachos que llegan, los que danzan, los que danzamos, la mayoría traemos acarreando unas miradas malas sobre la gente que nos mira como si fuéramos pandilleros o cosas así. Pero cuando nosotros empezamos a bailar, las miradas cambian. El sentimiento de la gente hacia nosotros se transforma totalmente. Somos queridos, somos aceptados, somos ejemplo a seguir. Solo cuando estás haciendo eso, te transformas en algo que todos quieren ser.
So in the case of the dance, when we dance and with the boys of the danza, we are engaged in dance. Actually, before we dance, we have encountered a sort of prejudice from the people that, you know, see us, because we are working class youth, as pandilleros, like people from gangs, gangsters, or sicarios, like hitmen, you know. And that's the way we are seen by the people. But through dancing in public space, that form of looking at us really transforms, and we are seen as an example to follow, as an example of achievement through the dance, as people who are worthy, in a way, gente con valor, ¿no?
Nos transformamos para ellos. Ellos son los que miran la transformación, nosotros somos los mismos.
So we transform for them. They are the one who experience the transformation. We continue to be the same.
And for you, Amanda, last question, the transformation.
Well, for me, transformation, I think dance is a form of thought or a form of knowing, and I feel I think it's a pity that in the Western modern colonial context, dance is reduced as a form of spectacle or as a self-expression, you know, like the expression of the self, the individual. And that is a very limited context that we have here in Europe or in the West, in the idea of stage dance. I think is a pity. And I think dance as a form of knowing produces in the dancer a form of thought that unifies, that brings together aspects that are apparently separated. And that form of thought, it transforms the way we see each other and we see the world. So I really think and celebrate dance as a form of knowing and as a thought form which is synthetic, which brings together. So, and that is for me far more relevant than the spectacle aspect, the aesthetic aspect, and the aspect of the representation of the individual or the expression of the individual. So for me, the transformation is related to that form, that moment when you are dancing and you experience a form of sensing or sense thinking, which is unifying your experience, and through which you also can receive messages that are relevant for your future and for the future of the community with whom you are working, and etc. I think it was beautiful. I mean, the challenge of this exercise is obvious. we didn't want it to make something easy, but I think ha sido muy hermoso, creo. No sé, maestro, ¿querría cerrar con algo más? Would you like to close with something else? Rigo, maestro, Nicole. ¿Estamos?
Muy interesantísimo.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Y pues por último, sabemos todos los aves, todos los animales siguen su danza. Todos los árboles también cuando por el viento sigue danzando. Humano más, ¿no? Todos los animales, todos los aves preparando, danzando.
So maestro is saying that not only humans are dancing, but
Los caballos,
animals, trees,
antes de casar, ¿no?
beforehand.
Acomodar todo.
Everyone is
Qué
dancing.
chido, ¿no?
Chidísimo, maestro. Vamos a terminar con un poco de música, ¿no? ¿Cómo ven?
Sí.
Yay!
No, pero tú estás guardando.
So we will finish with some music so that they can use if they want.
Ahí viene el venado, ahí viene el venado, ahí viene el danzón. Avenida Santo, Avenida Lado, Avenida Santo, saltato para arriba, para abajo, para arriba, pura medicina, pura medicina, pura medicina, pura medicina. Mueve tu cabeza, mueve tu cabeza, mueve tu cuerno, mueve tu oreja, mueve tu cintura, mueve tu cintura. Vamos a danzar como veladito. Pura venadito, pura venadito, pura medicina, pura medicina, pura medicina, pura medicina, pura medicina, pura medicina. Sana, sana nuestro corazón, tan parece. Meta kuyachi, kumeteo, papariyusi, meta kuyachi, kumeteo. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Rigo. Muchas
Mario.
gracias, maestro. Muchas gracias, Nicole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Rigo. Thank you.
De
Thank
nada,
you
muchas
so
gracias a
much.
ustedes.